My father canceled my graduation party because my sister felt uncomfortable with the attention not being on her. I made him regret it. I am Rachel, 22 years old, and after 4 years of working 3 part-time jobs to pay for college while maintaining a 3.8 GPA, my own father chose my pregnant sister's jealousy over celebrating the first person in our family to graduate from university. What he didn't know was that I had been documenting everything, and his betrayal just handed me the perfect weapon. The call came on a Tuesday evening, 3 days before my graduation ceremony. I was in my apartment, addressing invitations to the celebration dinner Dad had promised to host at Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant, where our family had celebrated every major milestone for the past decade. 30 people were expected: my professors, college friends, a few high school teachers who had supported me, and extended family who had watched me struggle through 4 years of 18-hour days balancing work and studies. "Rachel, honey, we need to talk about Saturday." Dad's voice carried that particular tone I'd learned to dread, the one he used when he was about to prioritize Jessica over everything else. "Your sister is having a rough pregnancy, and she feels like a big celebration might be too overwhelming for her right now. You know how emotional she gets." I stopped writing mid-address, my pen hovering over Mrs. Patterson's invitation. Mrs. Patterson, my high school guidance counselor who had spent countless hours helping me navigate college applications when my parents were too busy dealing with Jessica's latest drama. "What exactly are you saying, Dad? We're going to postpone the party. Maybe do something small next month when Jessica's feeling better. You understand, right? Family comes first." The casual way he dismissed 4 years of my sacrifice made my hands shake, not from sadness, from pure, crystalline rage. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Instead, I smiled because Jessica had just made the biggest mistake of her entitled life. What neither she nor Dad knew was that I had been accepted to Harvard Law School with a full scholarship, and the letter of recommendation that secured it had come from someone very close to home, someone whose opinion would matter very much to both of them very soon. Of course, Dad. Family first. I hung up and reached for the manila envelope I'd been saving for graduation day. It was time to move up my timeline. Growing up, I had always been the responsible one. While Jessica bounced from boyfriend to boyfriend, job to job, crisis to crisis, I maintained perfect attendance, volunteered at the animal shelter, and worked every summer to save money for college. When Jessica dropped out of community college to follow her boyfriend to Las Vegas, Mom and Dad just sighed and sent her money. When she came back pregnant and single at 26, they welcomed her home with open arms and converted my childhood bedroom into a nursery, moving my things to the basement. I didn't complain. I was already living in my own apartment, working as a barista, tutoring struggling students, and doing data entry for a law firm downtown, the partners at Mitchell. Gordon & Associates had noticed my attention to detail and work ethic. When senior partner David Gordon learned I was pre-law, he began giving me more substantial projects. When he discovered my last name, he began asking questions. "Your father is Robert Mitchell from Mitchell Construction," he had asked 6 months ago, his expression shifting from casual interest to something much sharper. "Yes, sir. Do you know him?" David's laugh was bitter. "Oh, I know him. He cost me a lot of money 15 years ago. Shoddy work on a commercial property. Shortcuts that led to a collapse. I lost 3 clients and nearly lost my practice dealing with the lawsuits. He studied me carefully, but his failures don't reflect on you. You've proven yourself here through your own merit." That conversation had planted a seed. Over the following months, as I continued working for the firm, I began noticing things. Documents that crossed my desk. Conversations I overheard. Phone calls David took behind closed doors. My father's name came up more often than coincidence would explain, usually in the context of ongoing investigations into construction fraud, safety violations, and tax evasion. 3 months ago, David had pulled me aside after I'd finished organizing files for a particularly complex case. "Rachel, I need to ask you something, and I want you to know there's no pressure either way. The FBI has been building a case against several construction companies in the Denver area for bid rigging and safety violations. Your father's company is central to their investigation." My blood had run cold, but I kept my expression neutral. "What does that have to do with me?" "They need someone with inside knowledge of how these companies operate. Someone who understands the industry but isn't directly involved. You've been around your father's business your entire life. You know how these men think, how they cut corners, how they justify their actions." He paused, watching my face. "They're looking for a consultant. Someone clean, someone smart, someone who wants to see justice done." I had asked for time to think about it. That night, I went home to my basement bedroom in my father's house, surrounded by boxes of Jessica's baby clothes, and listening to her complain upstairs about how tired pregnancy made her. I thought about the years of being overlooked, dismissed, treated like the family afterthought, while Jessica received unconditional support, despite never contributing anything positive to anyone's life. 2 days later, I called David and told him I was interested. For 3 months, I had been carefully documenting everything I observed at family dinners, business conversations I overheard, and company documents I glimpsed when Dad brought work home. The FBI didn't need me to steal anything or break any laws. They just needed confirmation of patterns they were already tracking, insider knowledge of how Dad's company operated, and verification of information they'd gathered through other sources. The investigation was nearly complete. Indictments were expected within the next 2 weeks. I had planned to tell my parents about Harvard Law School at my graduation party, letting them celebrate my success before learning that their world was about to collapse. I was going to be generous, giving them one last happy memory before the reckoning came. But Dad had just shown me that I didn't merit even that small kindness. Jessica's mild discomfort was more important than my 4 years of sacrifice. My achievement was worth less than her pregnant princess act. I opened my laptop and composed an email to Agent Martinez, the FBI contact David had introduced me to months earlier. The subject line was simple: ready to proceed immediately. Then I called Romano's and confirmed that I would indeed be hosting a celebration dinner this Saturday, not for 30 people, for 3. Me, David Gordon, and Agent Martinez. We had a lot to discuss about my father's business practices, and I could think of no better way to celebrate my graduation than by serving justice on the man who had just proven he would never see me as worthy of his respect. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Thanks for being understanding about the party. This pregnancy is just so hard, and I need all the support I can get right now. I typed back, don't worry about it. I'm sure you'll get exactly what you deserve. She responded with heart emojis, completely missing the steel beneath my words. In 3 days, I would walk across that graduation stage alone, my family too busy catering to Jessica's imaginary needs to witness the first college graduate in our family's history. But by the time the ceremony was over, I would have set in motion events that would ensure they never overlooked me again. After all, family first. And I was about to remind them all what family loyalty really looked like when it was properly reciprocated. The morning of my graduation ceremony, I woke up in my apartment to 17 missed calls from my mother. Her voicemails progressed from excited to confused to panicked. Rachel, honey, where are you? Your father went to pick you up, but you weren't at the house. Are you okay? Call me back immediately. I had deliberately stayed at my apartment, knowing they would expect me to come crawling back, grateful for whatever scraps of attention they might offer. Instead, I put on my cap and gown alone, took a selfie in my bathroom mirror, and drove to campus by myself. The ceremony was beautiful. Northwestern's campus looked magnificent in the late spring sunshine, and I felt genuinely proud as I walked across that stage to receive my diploma. When they called Rachel Mitchell, Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, summa cum laude, I heard scattered applause from my professors and classmates. No family whooping, no proud parents taking photos. But David Gordon was there in the audience, giving me a standing ovation, and Agent Martinez sat beside him, both of them wearing expressions of professional satisfaction. After the ceremony, I found my parents in the parking lot. Mom was crying, Dad looked uncomfortable, and Jessica sat in their car with the air conditioning running, scrolling through her phone as if nothing important was happening. Rachel, thank God! Mom rushed over to hug me. We were so worried when you didn't come home last night. Why didn't you answer your phone? I was busy preparing for today. I kept my voice neutral, letting them interpret that however they wanted. Dad cleared his throat. Listen, about the party situation. Your mother and I talked, and maybe we were hasty. We could still do something small this evening. Just immediate family. That's very generous. But I already have plans. I adjusted my graduation cap, feeling the weight of my honor cords across my shoulders. I'm having dinner with some colleagues from the law firm where I work. Jessica finally looked up from her phone. What law firm? You work at that coffee shop. I work at the coffee shop in the mornings. I've been doing paralegal work at Mitchell Gordon and Associates for the past 8 months. I thought I mentioned it. I hadn't actually. I had learned to keep my victories private in this family, since they were always overshadowed by Jessica's latest crisis anyway. Mitchell Gordon? Dad's face went pale. You mean David Gordon's firm? You know Mr. Gordon? I asked innocently, though I knew exactly why Dad recognized that name. We've had some business dealings in the past. Dad's voice was tight. What kind of work do you do there? Research mostly, document analysis. I help with case preparation. All true, though I didn't specify which cases. Actually, Mr. Gordon has been incredibly supportive of my career goals. He wrote me a recommendation letter for law school applications. Law school? Mom's eyes widened. Rachel, when did you apply to law school? Last fall. I've been accepted to several programs. I paused, savoring the moment. I'll be starting at Harvard in the fall. Full scholarship. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Jessica's mouth fell open. Mom started crying again. But these were different tears. Pride mixed with confusion and hurt. Dad just stared at me as if I were a stranger. Harvard Law School, he repeated slowly. And you didn't tell us. I was going to announce it at my graduation party. But plans change, don't they? Mom reached for my hand. Rachel, sweetheart, we are so proud of you. This is incredible news. We should celebrate. Mom, it's fine. Really. I understand that family priorities sometimes shift, And Jessica's comfort is more important right now. I'm not upset about it. The lie rolled off my tongue easily, and the fact that they believed it showed how little they really knew me. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Martinez. Dinner still on for 7 p.m.? We have updates to discuss. I typed back, looking forward to it. I should go, I told my parents. I need to return my rental gown and get ready for dinner. Wait, Dad stepped forward, something desperate in his eyes. Rachel, about David Gordon. What exactly have you been working on at his firm? I tilted my head, feigning confusion. Various cases. Why do you ask? No reason. Just be careful, okay? Some lawyers aren't as honorable as they seem. The irony of Robert Mitchell lecturing anyone about honor was so rich I nearly laughed out loud. Instead, I smiled sweetly. Don't worry, Dad. I've learned to be a very good judge of character. Working with Mr. A. Gordon has taught me so much about the law, about justice, about holding people accountable for their actions. Each word was carefully chosen, and I watched his face grow more uncomfortable with every syllable. That evening I sat in Romano's, the same restaurant where Dad had planned to throw my party before Jessica's feelings became more important. David Gordon raised his wine glass in a toast. To Rachel Mitchell, Harvard Law School class of 2027, and to justice finally being served. Agent Martinez clinked her glass against ours. The grand jury meets next week. Your insights have been invaluable, Rachel. We couldn't have built this case without your help understanding the inner workings of these construction companies. What exactly are the charges going to be? I asked, cutting into my salmon. Bid rigging, safety violations resulting in bodily harm, tax evasion, and fraud. Your father's company was part of a consortium that systematically overcharged the city on public projects for the past 8 years while using substandard materials. The stadium collapsed 3 years ago. That was their concrete work. 12 people were injured. I remembered that collapse. Dad had been stressed for weeks afterward, taking phone calls behind closed doors and snapping at everyone in the family. He'd told us it was just business headaches, but I'd seen the news reports about the investigation. People had been hurt because companies like his had cut corners to maximize profit. The indictments will be unsealed next Friday. Agent Martinez continued. Local media is already asking questions. This is going to be front-page news. David leaned back in his chair, studying my face. Are you prepared for what this means for your family? I took a sip of wine, considering the question. In 1 week, my father would be arrested on federal charges. His business would be seized, his assets frozen. The man who had just canceled my graduation party because my sister felt uncomfortable was about to learn what real discomfort felt like. My family made their priorities clear, I said finally. Dad chose to cancel my graduation party rather than tell Jessica she wasn't the center of the universe for one evening. They've had 22 years to show me I matter to them. Instead, they've consistently demonstrated that I'm an afterthought. My phone buzzed with another text from Jessica. Hope you had fun at your work dinner. Can you stop by tomorrow? I want to talk about baby shower plans. Mom thinks you should help organize it since you're so good at that stuff. I showed the text to David and Agent Martinez. David shook his head in amazement. She has no idea what's coming. None of them do. I deleted the message without responding. They've been so focused on their own little dramas that they never bothered to notice I've been building a life outside their dysfunction. Harvard Law School, a career in justice, connections to people who actually value competence over family politics. Agent Martinez smiled grimly. Your father's going to face 15 to 20 years if convicted on all counts. The other companies in the consortium are already trying to make deals, but your father seems to think his reputation will protect him. His reputation? I laughed, remembering all the times he'd lectured me about the importance of the Mitchell name, about family honor, about loyalty. He's about to learn exactly what his reputation is worth. We finished dinner as the sun set over Denver, the city lights beginning to twinkle in the distance. In 7 days, those same lights would illuminate news vans parked outside my father's house, reporters shoving microphones in his face as he was led away in handcuffs. As I drove home to my apartment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years around my family. Complete satisfaction. They had taught me that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty, that family can be the first to betray you, and that sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones who will sacrifice your happiness for their convenience. The lesson had been painful, but invaluable, and next week, I would show them exactly how well I had learned it. My phone rang as I pulled into my parking space. Mom's name appeared on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. Rachel, honey, your father and I have been talking. We realize we made a mistake about your party. We want to make it up to you. Maybe we could plan something special for this weekend? You deserve to be celebrated, sweetheart. Call me back. Too little, too late. I had already arranged my own celebration, and it was going to be far more memorable than anything they could have planned. I deleted the voicemail and went upstairs to my apartment. On my desk sat my Harvard Law School acceptance letter, my summa cum laude diploma, and a folder containing copies of all the evidence I'd provided to the FBI. 3 documents that represented the 3 pillars of my new life: academic achievement, personal integrity, and justice, served cold. Next Friday, when the indictments were unsealed, Dad would finally understand what it meant to be overlooked, dismissed, and betrayed by someone he should have been able to trust. The daughter he had ignored for 22 years was about to become the architect of his downfall. And unlike him, when I made a promise to deliver consequences, I kept it. Friday morning arrived with unseasonably cool weather and crystal clear skies. I had taken the day off from both jobs, telling my supervisors I had a family situation to handle. Technically true, though not in the way they would imagine. Agent Martinez called at 6 a.m. sharp. It's happening. Teams are moving into position now. Your father's arrest is scheduled for 8:30 a.m. at his office. The media has been notified. They'll have cameras there. I made coffee and turned on the local news, watching the morning anchors discuss traffic and weather, completely unaware that their programming was about to be interrupted by the biggest corruption scandal to hit Denver in a decade. My phone started ringing at 7:15. Jessica, calling from Mom and Dad's house where she'd been staying since her latest breakup. Rachel, something weird is happening. There are cars outside the house with people just sitting in them, and Dad got a phone call an hour ago and went white as a sheet. He left for the office early, and Mom is pacing around the kitchen crying. Do you know anything about this? I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I'm sure it's nothing serious. But you work at that law firm. Have you heard anything about Dad's business? He seemed really upset when you mentioned your boss yesterday. Before I could answer, I heard commotion in the background. Mom's voice, high and panicked. Jessica, come look at this. The news is saying something about arrests. Turn on Channel 7. Jessica went quiet, and I could hear the television volume increasing. The morning show had been interrupted by breaking news coverage. This is Channel 7 breaking news. Federal agents are conducting a massive operation across the Denver metropolitan area this morning, arresting multiple construction company executives on charges related to bid rigging and fraud. We're receiving reports that Robert Mitchell, CEO of Mitchell Construction, has been taken into custody at his downtown office. The phone went dead. Jessica had hung up, probably in shock. I turned up my own television volume and watched as helicopter footage showed my father being led out of his office building in handcuffs. Even from the aerial view, I could see the crowd of reporters, the federal agents in their windbreakers, the other employees standing around looking confused and terrified. My father looked smaller on television than he did in person, diminished. He kept his head down as agents helped him into the back seat of an unmarked car, but the cameras captured everything. The man who had spent my entire childhood lecturing me about responsibility and family honor was now the star of a federal perp walk. David Gordon called 15 minutes later. Are you watching? Every second of it. The other arrests are happening simultaneously. Johnson Construction, Apex Building, Sterling Development, 8 executives total. Your information was crucial to making this operation possible. On screen, the news anchor was reading from a prepared statement. According to federal prosecutors, the construction consortium allegedly overcharged the city of Denver by more than $40 million over an 8-year period, while systematically using substandard materials that pose safety risks to the public. My phone began buzzing incessantly. Mom calling, then Jessica, then numbers I didn't recognize, probably reporters who had somehow gotten hold of my contact information. I turned it off and continued watching the coverage. By 10 a.m., news vans were parked outside my parents' house. I could see Mom through the front window, peeking through the curtains as reporters knocked on the door. Jessica's car was gone. She had probably fled back to wherever she'd been living before moving in with our parents. The afternoon brought more developments. Channel 7 had obtained copies of some court documents, and they were reporting on the scope of the alleged fraud. The stadium collapse was front and center, with interviews from people who had been injured and families of victims. My daughter was in a wheelchair for 6 months because of that collapse, one woman told the reporter, tears streaming down her face. If these men cut corners to save money while people got hurt, they deserve everything that's coming to them. I thought about all the times Dad had complained about safety regulations, about inspectors who were too strict, about environmental requirements that ate into his profit margins. I'd thought it was just businessman griping. Now I understood it was the mindset that led to real people getting hurt. My landline rang. One of the few people who had that number was Mom. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Rachel, her voice was hollow, exhausted. I need you to come home, please. I am home, Mom, in my apartment. You know what I mean. Your father. They're saying terrible things about him on the news. The reporters won't leave us alone. Jessica had to go stay with a friend because they were following her car. I don't understand what's happening. I could hear the genuine confusion in her voice. Mom had always been willfully oblivious to the details of Dad's business dealings. Content to enjoy the lifestyle his success provided, without asking uncomfortable questions about how he achieved it. Mom, have you called a lawyer? Your father says his attorney is handling everything. He says it's all a misunderstanding, that some disgruntled former employee must have made up stories about him. She paused. Rachel, you work with lawyers. What does this mean? The question hung in the air between us. She was asking her daughter, the daughter whose graduation celebration had been canceled 3 days ago, to help make sense of the disaster that was consuming their family. It means Dad is in serious legal trouble. Federal charges aren't filed lightly, Mom. If they arrested him, they have evidence. But he's a good man. He built his business from nothing. He's provided for our family for 30 years. Good men don't get arrested by the FBI on fraud charges. The silence stretched so long, I thought she had hung up. Finally, she whispered, "Will you come see me? I'm scared, and I don't know what to do." Part of me wanted to drive over there, to comfort the woman who had raised me, who was genuinely innocent in all of this. But then I remembered Tuesday night, when she had stood silently in the kitchen while Dad canceled my party, when she had nodded along with his decision to prioritize Jessica's comfort over my achievement. "Mom, I'm starting law school at Harvard in 3 months. I need to focus on preparing for that transition." "Harvard?" Her voice cracked. "Rachel, that's wonderful, but why didn't you tell me?" I tried to tell the family yesterday at graduation. But then I realized that maybe some achievements are better celebrated with people who actually value them. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I've spent 22 years being the responsible daughter, the one who doesn't make waves, the one who gets overlooked because I'm not dramatic enough to demand attention. Well, I've learned to demand attention in other ways." Another long pause. "Rachel, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones who end up surprising you the most." I hung up before she could respond and turned my phone off completely. That evening, David Gordon invited me to his house for dinner with his family. His wife Sarah was a federal prosecutor, and their 2 teenage daughters were both planning to attend law school after college. Sitting around their dining table discussing legal strategy and career goals, I felt more at home than I had in my parents' house in years. "You should be proud of what you've accomplished," Sarah told me over dessert. "Taking a stand against corruption, even when it affects your own family, takes real courage." "It wasn't courage," I replied honestly. "It was justice. My father chose to build his success on other people's suffering. The people who were injured in that stadium collapse, the city taxpayers who were overcharged for substandard work, they deserved better." David raised his wine glass. "To Rachel Mitchell, future Harvard Law School graduate and current hero of federal law enforcement." As I drove home that night, I passed the news vans still camped outside my parents' house. The windows were dark except for one upstairs light, probably Mom, unable to sleep, trying to make sense of how her world had collapsed in a single day. I felt no satisfaction in her pain. She was collateral damage in a war between me and a man who had shown me exactly how little my accomplishments meant to him, but I felt no guilt either. I had chosen justice over family loyalty, and given the choice again, I would make the same decision. My father had taught me that actions have consequences. On Tuesday, he had shown me that my 4 years of sacrifice and academic achievement were less important to him than Jessica's pregnancy-induced mood swings. Today, I had shown him what consequences looked like when they were delivered by someone who had learned to fight back. The next 3 weeks transformed my family's world into something unrecognizable. Dad's bail was set at $2 million. Money the family didn't have since all his assets had been frozen pending the outcome of the case. He remained in federal detention, sharing a cell with a man arrested for tax evasion and spending his days in orange jumpsuits instead of the expensive suits he'd always worn like armor. Mom had to take a job for the first time in 25 years, working as a receptionist at a dental office because it was the only employment she could find that didn't require extensive background checks or professional references. The reporters had moved on to other stories, but the neighbors hadn't forgotten. She told me later that grocery shopping had become an exercise in humiliation, with people whispering and pointing as she walked through the aisles. Jessica's pregnancy became significantly more complicated when the stress triggered early labor concerns, and she had to be hospitalized for bed rest. The medical bills were astronomical, and without Dad's insurance coverage, which had been terminated when his company was seized, the family was drowning in debt they had no way to pay. I learned these details not from direct contact, but from overhearing conversations at David Gordon's law firm. Word travels fast in legal circles, and several attorneys in town were monitoring the Mitchell construction case closely, both for the precedent it would set, and because some of their own clients had been affected by Dad's allegedly fraudulent work. "The family is hemorrhaging money," David mentioned during one of our regular check-ins. "Jessica Mitchell is looking at $100,000 in medical bills, and the mother is making $12 an hour. They'll be bankrupt within 6 months, even if Robert makes bail." I nodded, filing the information away without comment. They had chosen their priorities when they canceled my graduation party. Now they were living with the consequences of those choices, just as I was living with the benefits of mine. Harvard Law School had sent my orientation packet, complete with a course catalog that read like a roadmap to everything I had ever wanted to accomplish: constitutional law, criminal procedure, federal courts, ethics in legal practice. Each class description filled me with anticipation for the intellectual challenges ahead. My apartment had become a shrine to my future success. Acceptance letters from 6 different law schools were framed on my wall, along with my summa cum laude diploma and a photo of me shaking hands with Northwestern's dean at graduation. I had built this life entirely on my own merit, without family connections or inherited advantages, and every day I felt more confident about the path I had chosen. The only contact I'd had with my family came through a series of increasingly desperate voicemails from Jessica. Her messages progressed from confusion to anger to outright begging as the reality of their financial situation became clear. "Rachel, I know you're mad about the party thing, but this is bigger than that. Dad needs our help. Mom is falling apart. I'm on bed rest and can't work. We need money for lawyers, for medical bills, for basic expenses. You're the only one in the family with savings and a steady job. Please call me back." I deleted each message without responding, the same way they had dismissed my achievements for 22 years. The breakthrough in Dad's case came exactly 1 month after his arrest. Agent Martinez called me with an update that exceeded even my expectations. 3 of the other executives have taken plea deals in exchange for testimony against your father. They're painting him as the ringleader of the whole operation, the one who organized the bid rigging scheme and pressured others to use substandard materials. If their testimony holds up, he's looking at 25 to 30 years. 25 to 30 years. I repeated the numbers, letting their weight settle in my mind. Dad was 52. Even with good behavior, he would be nearly 80 when he got out of prison. His entire life, his legacy, his carefully constructed image of success and respectability, all of it was gone. There's more, Martinez continued. The civil suits are starting to pile up. Families of people injured in the stadium collapse, the city seeking reimbursement for overcharges, other companies claiming they lost legitimate contracts because of the rigged bidding process. Even if he somehow beats the criminal charges, the civil liability will bankrupt him permanently. That afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Rachel, it's me." Jessica's voice was weak, strained. "I'm calling from the hospital. They moved me to a charity ward because our insurance was canceled. The doctors say I might lose the baby if I can't get proper treatment." I waited for her to continue, offering no words of comfort or assistance. "Please," she whispered. "I know we hurt you about the party. I know Dad made the wrong choice, but this baby didn't do anything wrong. I'm begging you. If you have any money saved, any way to help us get through this." "Jessica, I have a question for you." "Anything. When Dad canceled my graduation party, whose idea was it? Did you actually tell him you were uncomfortable, or did he make that decision on his own?" Silence. Long, guilty silence. "It was your idea, wasn't it? You didn't want me to have a celebration because you were jealous that someone else would be the center of attention for one evening." "Rachel, I was hormonal. I was scared about the pregnancy. I wasn't thinking clearly. So it was your idea. You convinced Dad to cancel my party because you couldn't stand the thought of your little sister being celebrated for actually accomplishing something meaningful with her life." "It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that." My voice remained perfectly calm, clinical. "You saw that I was about to receive recognition for 4 years of hard work and academic excellence, and you manipulated Dad into taking that away from me because your pregnancy made you feel entitled to every ounce of family attention." "Rachel, please. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I admit I was wrong. But the baby is not my responsibility. Just like my graduation party wasn't your business to interfere with." "What do you want me to say? What do you want me to do to make this right?" I looked around my apartment at the Harvard Law School materials spread across my desk, at the life I had built independently of their dysfunction and manipulation. "There's nothing you can do, Jessica. You made your choice when you convinced Dad to cancel my party. I've made mine." "What choice?" "Rachel, what does that mean?" "It means that family loyalty is a two-way street. You showed me exactly how much my achievements matter to this family. Now I'm showing you how much your crises matter to me." I hung up and blocked her number, the same way I had blocked Mom's calls and Dad's prison account attempts to reach me. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at Romano's, the restaurant where Dad had originally planned to throw my graduation party. I sat alone at a table for 2, ordered the most expensive wine on the menu, and toasted my Harvard Law School acceptance letter, while my father ate prison food 50 miles away. The irony was perfect. I was celebrating my greatest achievement in the exact location where my family had chosen to humiliate me instead. But now I was here on my own terms, with my own money, surrounded by my own success. My phone buzzed with a text from David Gordon. "Saw the news about additional charges. Federal prosecutors are adding racketeering to the indictment. Your father's legal troubles just got significantly worse." I typed back, "Good. Justice delayed is justice denied." As I finished my wine and prepared to leave, I reflected on the elegant simplicity of what had transpired. My family had taught me that I wasn't worth celebrating, that my accomplishments were less important than Jessica's emotional comfort, that my 4 years of sacrifice meant nothing compared to her latest drama. In response, I had taught them that actions have consequences, that underestimating someone can be a fatal mistake, and that the quiet, responsible daughter they had ignored for 22 years was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Dad would spend the next quarter-century in federal prison, remembering every day that his downfall had begun with a phone call canceling his daughter's graduation party. Jessica would struggle with single motherhood and crushing medical debt, learning firsthand what it felt like to face life's challenges without unconditional family support. Mom would work minimum-wage jobs until retirement, finally understanding what financial struggle looked like after decades of taking Dad's ill-gotten prosperity for granted. And I would graduate from Harvard Law School, build a career in federal prosecution, and spend my life ensuring that men like my father faced justice for their crimes. The scales had been balanced. The lesson had been taught. The consequences had been delivered. Family first, just as Dad had always said. I had simply redefined what family meant and who deserved my loyalty in return. 1 year later, I stood in Harvard Law School's orientation hall, surrounded by the brightest legal minds of my generation. My nameplate read, Rachel Mitchell, JD candidate, class of 2027, and I wore it like a badge of honor earned through merit, determination, and a willingness to sacrifice everything comfortable for something meaningful. The letter in my apartment that morning had contained news from Colorado. Dad's trial had ended with conviction on all counts. 28 years in federal prison, with possibility of parole after 22 years. The civil suits had proceeded as expected, resulting in a judgment that would prevent him from ever rebuilding his wealth, even if he lived to be released. Jessica had lost the baby in her 6th month, the stress and inadequate medical care finally taking their toll. She was living in a studio apartment, working double shifts as a waitress, and according to mutual acquaintances, had developed a drinking problem that made employment increasingly difficult to maintain. Mom had lasted 8 months at the dental office before being let go for frequent absences and emotional instability. She was currently living in subsidized housing and receiving government assistance, a fall from grace that would have been unthinkable when Dad's construction company was thriving. None of them had contacted me in over 6 months. They had finally learned the lesson I had spent 22 years trying to teach them, that I was perfectly capable of existing without their approval, support, or presence in my life. My Harvard classmates came from privileged backgrounds, most of them. Their fathers were senators and CEOs. Their mothers were judges and philanthropists. They had grown up expecting success, surrounded by examples of achievement and networks of influential connections. I had earned my place among them through pure merit, having overcome a family that actively discouraged my ambitions, and a father whose criminal behavior could have destroyed my career before it began. Instead, his downfall had become the foundation of my success, proof that I possessed the moral courage and intellectual capability to choose justice over comfort. During our first constitutional law seminar, Professor Williams asked us to introduce ourselves and share what had motivated our interest in legal careers. When my turn came, I stood and spoke clearly to the room full of future attorneys general, Supreme Court clerks, and federal judges. My name is Rachel Mitchell. I'm here because I believe that justice delayed is justice denied, and that sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who need to be held accountable the most. I learned that family loyalty without mutual respect is just enabling, and that protecting others from consequences doesn't make you loving, it makes you complicit. Several classmates nodded, assuming I was speaking in theoretical terms about abstract principles of law and ethics. They had no idea I was describing the systematic destruction of my own father's criminal enterprise, or that my Harvard Law School education was being funded by the scholarship money I'd earned while secretly working as an FBI informant. After class, a classmate named Jonathan approached me. His father was a federal circuit court judge, and he clearly came from generational wealth and legal tradition. Interesting perspective on family loyalty, he said, studying my face with intelligent eyes. Most people here talk about law as an abstract intellectual exercise. You sound like you've seen real consequences up close. Justice isn't abstract when you've watched it work, I replied simply. And have you? Watched it work? I thought about Dad in his orange jumpsuit, about Jessica struggling to pay rent, about Mom learning to live within her means for the first time in decades. I thought about the stadium collapse victims who were finally receiving compensation from the Criminal Restitution Fund, and about the city of Denver recovering millions of dollars in fraudulent overcharges. Yes, I said. I've watched it work beautifully. That evening, I received an email from Agent Martinez, who had become something of a mentor in the year since Dad's arrest. She was writing to congratulate me on beginning law school, and to update me on a new investigation into municipal corruption that had grown out of the construction fraud case. Your father's cooperation in prison has been minimal, she wrote, but the information you provided continues to generate new leads. We've now opened investigations into 6 other companies and 4 city officials. The ripple effects of your decision to come forward will be felt for years to come. I replied with a brief thank you, noting that I remained available to consult on similar cases during my law school years. David Gordon had already arranged for me to work as a summer intern with the FBI's white-collar crime division, a position that would provide invaluable experience and excellent networking opportunities. My apartment near Harvard was smaller than the one I'd had in Denver, but it felt infinitely larger because it was entirely mine. The walls were covered with academic achievements, professional certifications, and letters of recommendation from federal prosecutors who respected my work. No family photos, no sentimental reminders of a childhood spent being overlooked and dismissed. On my desk sat a framed copy of the newspaper headline from the day Dad was sentenced. Construction company CEO gets 28 years for fraud scheme. Below it was my Harvard Law School acceptance letter. And beside that was a business card from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston, where I had been invited to apply for a position after graduation. The symmetry was perfect. The man who had canceled my graduation party rather than tell his pregnant daughter that the world didn't revolve around her was now spending his days in a federal penitentiary, while I was beginning my journey toward becoming the kind of prosecutor who would put men like him behind bars. I had learned that family was not defined by blood or obligation, but by mutual respect and genuine support. I had learned that justice was not a theoretical concept, but a practical tool that could reshape lives and correct power imbalances. Most importantly, I had learned that the quiet, responsible daughter everyone overlooks might be the most dangerous person in the room. My phone rang as I was reviewing tomorrow's criminal law assignments. David Gordon's name appeared on the screen. "Rachel, I wanted to congratulate you on your first day at Harvard. How did it go?" "Perfectly. Thank you for everything, David. I couldn't have done this without your support. You could have, and you would have. I just provided the opportunity. Your courage and intelligence did the rest." He paused. "I also called to let you know that we received a letter at the firm today. Your sister is trying to contact you through our office. What does she want?" "Money, from what I can tell. She's apparently facing eviction and asking if you would consider helping with her rent." I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no familial guilt. Jessica had made her choices when she convinced Dad to cancel my graduation party, and I had made mine when I chose justice over family loyalty. Please respond that I am no longer available for consultation on family matters, and that future attempts to contact me through professional channels will be considered harassment. Consider it done. After we hung up, I returned to my studies, diving into cases about federal jurisdiction and constitutional protections. Each page of legal precedent felt like building blocks for the career I was constructing, one case at a time. Outside my window, Cambridge glowed with the lights of one of the world's greatest universities. Inside my apartment, I was surrounded by the evidence of what happened when you refused to accept being undervalued and chose to fight back with intelligence, patience, and unwavering commitment to justice. Dad had taught me that actions have consequences. He just hadn't expected that his daughter, the quiet one, the responsible one, the one whose achievements didn't matter enough to celebrate, would be the one to teach him what those consequences looked like. I had promised myself that I would make him regret canceling my graduation party. Mission accomplished. Now I had bigger promises to keep and a legal career to build on the foundation of his downfall. After all, family first, and I had finally learned to choose the right family.